Hi everyone, welcome to my lesson on the while statement in Python. The while statement or while loop executes a block of code while a certain condition is true. It's a little different than the if statement we discussed earlier. The if statement evaluates a condition and executes commands based on whether that condition is met, whereas the while statement creates a continuous loop that is only broken when the condition for the while statement changes. To illustrate the difference here, we are using a simple block of code with the if statement. Let us run this to see what happens. The n variable is set to 0 and therefore activates the if statement because 0 is obviously less than 3. The block of code prints the value, adds 1, and then the program exits. Now let's use the same block of code with the while statement. Again, n is assigned the value 0, and the while statement is activated because it's less than 3. The number is printed and 1 is added, but the while loop, the block of code continues to execute for another loop because now n is equal to 1 and still less than 3. This loop continues until the n value becomes 3, which is not less than 3, so the block exits after printing the n value 3 times. So this is great, but what really are the practical uses of the while loop? One common use is when you need a continuous state until something happens, such as a key press or a special character. The while statement is also handy to loop through some code for certain patterns. So here we have the same code on the slide. We're using counter instead of n, and we're going to 10 instead of 3, but everything else is the same, and it prints from 0 to 9. We could make it a little more interesting and look for the even numbers between 0 and 10. We do that with a modulus. If the number divided by 2 is equal to 0, then it's an even number, and we can print that. The thing to note here is that if the counter increment is at the top of the block, the output will print all the way to 10. And if we move the increment counter to the bottom of the block, it'll only print to 8. And the reason for this is that if the counter is incremented before the print statement, you'll get an extra loop before the condition is not met. So let's use the while statement now with the game that we created earlier for the if statement. We'll put while in front of it, and as you'll see, it will create an infinite loop, and we can run the game as many times as we want. And while this might seem fun in the beginning, at some point we're going to have to put an exit here to let the user exit out of the game when they're tired of guessing numbers between 1 and 20. So the way we do that is, if user input equal to y, then we'll break out of the loop. And this would be good practice, or else they would have to press Control Z or cancel, and that would cause errors. It would cause your program to crash. So we let the user know that they can press Y to exit the program. And now you notice we have two if statements side by side, and we said earlier that this was not good practice. But in this case, it really doesn't matter, because if the first if statement is true, then the game ends anyway. So it doesn't matter that both of them will be checked in each case. Okay, and finally, off to do something useful with our while statement. We'll create an application here to take student info and enter it into a database or into a dictionary. So first of all, we're going to create a dictionary, an empty dictionary with student. And secondly, we'll create a variable active, and we'll set it to true. So this is the same as saying while true. So while active, and then the user input will be what is the student's name. And so the database is going to consist of the student's name and the courses they're taking. So the second variable is going to be the course that the student is signing up for, or has signed up for. And now we're going to add the student name. This is the dictionary format, so we'll add it into brackets, and then the course, that'll be the value. So the user ID will be the key in the dictionary called student, and the course will be the value. We'll also create an exit continue variable here to see if whoever is entering the data has completed entering the data, or if they need to add more names. So we let them know to print Y to continue, and if they don't, the while loop will exit and will print a list of students and courses from the dictionary. So here's our if statement to verify that the string exit condition is not equal to y. And if it is, we'll break and exit out, just like we did with the guessing game earlier. And now we'll print out our dictionary with the standard dictionary looping routine. And S name is obviously student name, and S course is the course. I'm using the print formatters here, but you don't have to do it this way. You can use the traditional printing just by putting the variables into print parentheses, but I find this way to be more flexible. So we'll put the /n again, similar to before, just to push it down a line so that it separates from the input the user puts. And we'll put a tab between the student name and the student course. And this is the header, obviously, that will be printed first, and then each student and each course will be printed after this. So let's do some inputting. We have a student called Albert Einstein, and Albert is going to take a math course. And then we have another student, Mother Teresa. This is a very unusual class. And Mother Teresa is going to take social studies. And our final student is Bill Gates. And Bill is going to take information technology, which is a good suggestion for Bill. So when we hit no here or anything other than yes, we have a printout. It's not a very pretty printout, but you see you have the students with the courses they're taking. So we could clean up our print statement and get this to look nicer. So there it is, all pretty. I made a mistake in the code here. I don't know if the astute among you saw it, but I actually used a break statement. It's not really a mistake, but I could have done this better. I used a break statement to break out if the user didn't press Y, but actually in the beginning I set active equal to true. So instead of using the break, you can also just set active equal to false, which would be a much cleaner way of doing that. Would make more sense. So here's the updated code with the active equal to false fix instead of using the break statement, and this would be a much better way of doing this, even though both ways will yield the same results. And also I've changed the print statement to the conventional print statement with just adding two variables in the print parentheses and putting some tabs in between. And as you can see, I need to convert them to strings as well. So I do suggest that you take the time to learn the print formatters in Python. It'll give you much more control than just putting the variables in brackets. So the website to do that is over at thepython.org under the documentation. I put the link below, and all the details on how to use the print formatters can be found there. So there are the basics of the while statement. You'll find it very useful in your code, especially if you're going to code in games or monitor files or connections in your code. All the code used in this video is in my GitHub repository at the link below. In the next video, we're going to look at functions, which are very important also. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you have, please don't forget to share, like, and subscribe. Talk to you soon.